Ever thought about what makes epoxy such a versatile material? Well, epoxy is a thermosetting resin, which means it hardens when heat is applied. It's commonly used in a variety of applications, from home improvement projects to industrial manufacturing. Its ability to bond with a range of materials, coupled with its high strength and resistance to wear, makes epoxy a highly sought-after material for DIY enthusiasts. Today, we will delve deeper into epoxy, and you'll learn how to use it effectively. Did you know there are different types of epoxy? Well, indeed there are, and each type serves a unique purpose. Let's dive right in. Marine epoxy, as the name suggests, is specially designed for applications that will be in contact with water. This makes it perfect for repairing boats, surfboards, or any other aquatic equipment. Next, we have tabletop epoxy. This is typically used for coating surfaces like tables and countertops, giving them a glossy, durable finish. It's also great for encapsulating objects within the surface, allowing for some truly creative designs. Finally, let's talk about casting epoxy. This type is designed for deep pour applications, making it ideal for creating larger objects like furniture or sculptures. It cures slowly, providing ample working time and reducing the risk of bubbles. Each type of epoxy has its unique characteristics, and understanding them is crucial. Choosing the right epoxy for your project is key. Safety first, isn't it? The world of epoxy is fascinating and limitless, but as with any substance, handling it requires some precautions. Firstly, always remember that your skin and eyes are precious. Make sure to don a pair of gloves before you start working with epoxy. This prevents direct contact with the skin, which can lead to irritation or more serious problems. And don't forget about the goggles. They protect your eyes from any accidental splashes. Secondly, consider your respiratory health. Epoxy fumes can be harmful if inhaled. A mask or a respirator can be your best friend in this situation, filtering out those unwanted particles from the air you breathe. Lastly, always work in a well-ventilated space. Fresh air can help dissipate the fumes and reduce your exposure to them. It's not just about the immediate effects, but also about your long-term health. Remember, safety should never be compromised when working with epoxy. So how do we get started with epoxy? Our first step is to prepare the surfaces that we'll be working with. This is an essential part of the process, as a well-prepared surface will ensure the epoxy adheres properly, leading to a more durable and long-lasting finish. Let's begin by cleaning the surface. This is a crucial step you don't want to skip. Even the smallest bit of dust or dirt can interfere with the epoxy's ability to bond with the surface. Using a microfiber cloth is a great way to pick up any fine particles. If your surface has any grease or oil on it, a mild detergent will do the trick. Just remember, the cleaner the better. Now let's talk about drying. After cleaning, it's important to let the surface dry completely. Any moisture left behind can cause the epoxy to bubble or not cure properly. Depending on the material of your surface and the climate you're in, this could take anywhere from a few hours to a full day. So, a little patience goes a long way here. Also, if there are any cracks or dents on the surface, now would be the time to repair them. Smooth it out as much as possible for the best results. So, there you have it. Preparing your surfaces might take a little time and effort, but believe me, it's all worth it. Remember, a successful epoxy project starts with a well-prepared surface. Proper surface preparation is crucial for a successful epoxy project. Now let's move on to the mixing process. Mixing epoxy is a delicate balance of science and art. It all starts with the two key players, the epoxy resin and the hardener. These two components, when combined in the correct ratio, create a chemical reaction that transforms the liquid mix into a solid, glossy finish. First things first, you'll want to measure out your epoxy resin and hardener. The ratio is crucial here. Typically it's a 1-to-1 ratio. That is, for every part of epoxy resin you'll need an equal part of hardener, but always check the manufacturer's instructions, as ratios can vary. Now onto the mixing. Pour your hardener into the epoxy resin. Why this order, you may wonder? Well, the hardener is usually a bit thinner, and combining it this way helps to ensure a thorough blend. As for the technique, think of making a cake batter. You want to stir slowly and consistently, scraping the sides and bottom of your mixing vessel regularly. This isn't a rushed process. It's important to take your time to avoid introducing air bubbles into the mix, which can mar the final finish. How long should you stir? Until the mixture is completely homogeneous, without any streaks. This usually takes around 2 to 3 minutes. The result should be a clear, unified mix with the consistency of light syrup. And here's a pro tip. Once you're done stirring, let the mixture sit for a minute or two. This allows any air bubbles that may have been whipped up during mixing to rise to the surface. Remember, the success of your epoxy project hinges on this step. Get it wrong and you might end up with a sticky mess or a brittle finish, but get it right and you're on your way to creating a masterpiece. The mixing process might seem like simple stirring, but it's far more than that. It's the foundation of your epoxy project, the bedrock upon which the beauty and durability of your final piece rests. A well-mixed epoxy ensures a strong and durable finish. With a well-mixed epoxy, we're ready for application, and that's where the magic begins. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to apply epoxy to get that glossy, glass-like finish. First, ensure that your surface is clean, dry and smooth. Any dust or debris can affect the final look, so it's worth taking a few extra moments to make sure it's perfect. Next, pour your mixed epoxy onto the center of your surface. The reason we start in the center is to prevent the epoxy from spilling over the edges. You'll want to pour a generous amount. But remember, it's easier to add more later than to take away. Now, with the help of a plastic or silicone spreader, start spreading the epoxy evenly across the surface. Start from the center and work your way out to the edges. This method ensures an even distribution, avoiding thick spots or pooling. As you're spreading, keep a keen eye out for any bubbles that might form. If you spot any, don't panic. Just gently pop them with a toothpick or a small needle. Don't worry, these tiny punctures won't affect the overall look of your project. Once you've covered your surface evenly with epoxy, it's time to let it cure. And here's where your patience truly gets tested. Epoxy curing can take anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, depending on the type of epoxy and the environmental conditions. During this curing time, keep your project in a clean, dust-free environment. Any particles that fall onto the surface can get stuck in the epoxy, ruining that mirror-like finish we're after. And remember, don't touch. It might be tempting to poke or prod, but resist the urge. Let your project sit undisturbed until it's completely cured. Finally, after your epoxy has fully cured, you'll be left with a beautifully smooth and shiny surface. It's a sight to behold, isn't it? Patience is key when applying epoxy. Rushing can lead to unsatisfactory results. So remember, take your time and let the epoxy work its magic. Your project will thank you for it. So we've covered quite a bit about epoxy, haven't we? We've journeyed through the vast world of this versatile substance, and it's time to encapsulate our learning into a neat package. Firstly, we dove into the different types of epoxy, each with its own unique properties and uses. We learned about the two main categories, namely the one-part epoxy and the two-part epoxy. We discovered that one-part epoxy cures with heat, while two-part epoxy cures when the resin and the hardener are mixed together. We also explored the various specialty epoxies, like waterproof and heat-resistant variants, broadening our understanding of epoxy's versatility. Next, we stressed the importance of safety measures when handling epoxy. We learned that it's essential to work in a well-ventilated area, wear appropriate protective clothing, and avoid direct skin contact with the substance. We also discussed the need to keep epoxy out of reach of children and pets, emphasizing the significance of safety in all our do-it-yourself endeavors. Our journey then took us to the essential step of surface preparation. We learned that surfaces need to be clean, dry, and lightly sanded before applying epoxy. We discovered that proper surface preparation can make the difference between a successful project and a disappointing outcome. Then, we delved into the art of mixing epoxy. We found out that the ratio of resin to hardener is crucial for achieving the desired result. We also learned that it's important to mix the components thoroughly, but without introducing too many air bubbles into the mixture. Finally, we discussed the application of epoxy. We learned that applying epoxy is a delicate process that requires patience and precision. We discovered that using the right tools and techniques can make the application process smoother and more efficient. In conclusion, we've seen that working with epoxy is an art that requires knowledge, safety awareness, meticulous preparation, careful mixing, and precise application. Remember, mastering epoxy use takes practice, so get started, stay safe, and have fun with your projects. And